With the popularity of recent TV series rooted in the Wild West, let's revisit some famous women of the Wild West. Annie Oakley, Calamity Jane, Belle Starr, Pearl Hart were all women of the Wild West who shot down the view that life as a woman pioneer was about cooking, sewing, cleaning, and caring for children. Born during a time when women stood in the shadows of their rugged men, these trailblazers proved that they were as good, if not better, than their male counterparts. Some of them became legends as outlaws, shocking society with their ruthless and so-called unladylike behavior at the time. Born 1852 in Missouri, Martha Jane Canary, better known as Calamity Jane, was an American frontierswoman, sharpshooter, and storyteller. She epitomized a tough, rebellious character. Hard drinking, gunslinging, and bragging of her exploits, she often posed as a man to find more freedom for her adventures. Traveling to the West at the age of 13 with her parents, she abstained from the traditional women roles of the period and spent most of her time with the men and joining hunting parties. As Calamity Jane describes it, she was commended by the others as a remarkably good shot and a fearless rider. Later, she worked as a scout, donning the male uniform and earning the reputation of being able to handle a horse better than most and shoot like a cowboy. In addition to many exploits, she was known for being an acquaintance of Wild Bill Hickok and toured with Buffalo Bill Cody and Sitting Bull in the Wild West show. She eventually passed away in 1903 from complications around alcoholism and pneumonia and is buried in Deadwood, South Dakota. She has been the subject of multiple shows and movies and was one of the main characters in the recent HBO series Deadwood. Annie Oakley, born Phoebe Ann Mosey in Ohio 1860, was an American, a sharpshooter who starred in and was made famous in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Oakley developed hunting skills as a child to provide for her impoverished family in western Ohio. At age 15, she won a shooting contest against an experienced marksman whom she married in 1876. The pair joined Buffalo Bill in 1885, performing in Europe before royalty and other heads of state. Unlike Calamity Jane, though, Annie Oakley, the Quaker, retained her feminine style of dress with a calf-length skirt, long sleeves, and leggings, making it her trademark. She frequently donated to charitable organizations for orphans throughout her life, pressed for women to be independent and educated, was a key influence in the creation of the image of the American cowgirl. She has been portrayed in multiple shows, movies, and the musical Annie Get Your Gun, loosely based on her life. While Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley wielded a gun, they never used it as a threat, unlike outlaws Pearl Hart and Belle Starr. Pearl Hart, born 1871, was a Canadian-born outlaw of the American Old West. She committed one of the last recorded stagecoach robberies in the United States, and her crime gained notoriety primarily because of her gender. Many details of Hart's life are uncertain, with available reports being varied and often contradictory. She was inspired by the strong women of the West, particularly Annie Oakley, with whom she became enamored after seeing her perform. Leaving her children at home in Canada, Hart moved to Arizona and soon found herself engaged in criminal activity as a solution to her financial woes. It began with minor theft, luring men into her room, after which they'd be knocked out and robbed. Soon, Hart and her partner Joe Boot were planning a more elaborate heist, robbing the stagecoach that ran between Florence and Globe, Arizona. While Joe Boot held up the driver, Pearl Hart, with her hair cut and dressed as a man, robbed the passengers. They were caught, she escaped from jail, and the Bandit Queen legend was born. At her trial, she famously expressed her feelings on women's rights, saying, "I shall not consent to be tried under a law in which my sex had no voice in making." Followed by a media frenzy, Hart was sent to Yuma Territorial Prison to serve her sentence, the only female at an all-male facility, given an oversized mountainside cell that included a small yard and allowed her to entertain reporters and other guests, as well as pose for photographs. Her release from prison came in the form of a December 1902 pardon from Arizona Territorial Governor. She was given train ticket to Kansas City, where she largely stayed out of the public eye. The most famous bandit queen was Belle Starr, whose association with Jesse James and the Younger Brothers and her extensive list of illegal activity made her one of the most notorious female outlaws in the Wild West. Born 1848 in Missouri, Belle was raised on a family farm, received a classical education, and learned piano while graduating from Missouri's Carthage Female Academy, a private institution that her father had helped to found. Later, moving to Texas after the Civil War and marrying a man who was involved with several criminal gangs, her husband Jim Reed was eventually shot by a deputy sheriff after being in custody for a stagecoach robbery. Already a rebel and a crack shot, Belle put their children in the care of relatives and took up a variety of illegal activities, organizing robberies and harboring criminals. Belle wore buckskins and boots, a man's Stetson hat with an ostrich plume, and proudly displayed her pistols. When not dressing as a man and committing robbery, legend says she spent her time in saloons, drinking and gambling and galloping down streets with guns blazing. In and out of courts and prison, Belle's life ended in a suitably dramatic fashion. Shot in the back while riding home from the store to her ranch in 1889. The incredible tales of these women became folklore, their exploits romanticized and exaggerated in dime novels, and later in the musical and motion picture industries. Though the line between fact and imagination is blurred, one thing is clear. These women of the Wild West were pioneers in their own way, challenging the traditional roles of women in the 19th century. For reading suggestions, see the video notes below.